Akhetaten's Gates, Chapter 13. The morning of my wedding was absolutely beautiful. The birds were singing outside. The air was so fresh, like the world was beginning anew. I was isolated with ladies-in-waiting, I suppose. I never had personal servants before, but there they were, fussing over me, doing my hair, decorating a fine white dress with ribbons and ornaments. I really couldn't get a word in with them. Not that that sort of thing really mattered to me. I kept wondering about Amenhotep. What was he doing? Were servants fussing over him too? It was so strange. Life felt like it was whisking by. Innocence of childhood was fading away. We were adults now, at the tender age of 13 and 15. At least, that's what everyone said. Egyptians normally didn't have such grand weddings. Not like this, anyway. This was something out of the ordinary. But then, Amenhotep and I were far from ordinary. But he insisted, despite his bashfulness. This was a celebration to Nefertiti, a beautiful woman has come. A beautiful woman has come. That is what my name meant. But leave it to my husband-to-be to make it so much more poetic. This would be interesting. I peered out of the window, seeing the sun shining so bright and forgiving. It was really nice. Aten, that which brought me here. Was it coming to watch our marriage? Well, it was obvious. Aten was the sun, right? So it saw everything. I'm sure Amenhotep was thinking the same. I was distracted and pulled from my thoughts as one of Amenhotep's sisters, the eldest one, Cinnamon, walked in unnoticed, clapping her hands in an authoritative manner. She was calm, collected, and very much an image of her mother. How frightening, a mini tea. Finish up, girls! It's almost time! We need to get the bride ready or my brother won't shut his mouth. Is he making that much of a fuss over this? I asked. Oh, he's impossible, she replied. If it wasn't for the fact that he was getting married today, I'd just strangle him. I had to stifle a laugh. I'm nervous about this too. Well, at least you are polite enough to be nervous quietly. He's driving everybody crazy. He's spouting off all sorts of orders, demands, and complaints. But it only proves that he is my brother. He is my mother's son. He's a very sensitive man, Cinnamon, I emphasized. He's obsessive. My heart goes out to you. You have to put up with him forever. I don't mind, I smiled. Every day is a new adventure. I love him very much. She went silent a moment, thinking or reflecting. She finally let out a chuckle. You are something, Nefertiti. I am the eldest sister. I've known him since he was a bean in my mother's belly. He's a very unique sort of fellow. But then, you're a unique sort of girl, aren't you? You're all he talks about. I guess what I'm trying to say is, she placed a hand on my shoulder. Good luck. I'll need it. I'm so nervous. I am excited about being his wife, but it really scares me to become a queen. Oh, don't worry about it. It'll come when it comes, she assured. I then let out a squeal. I'm getting married! Well, it was only a matter of time, she laughed. But this behavior is expected from you. Besides, you're in tune. You might want to give him some lessons. She took my hand. Okay, sister, here we go. The moment that we were all waiting for is upon us. It's the moment, and we will never understand how he got it. You are very much like your mother, I laughed. To this, Cinnamon beamed proudly. The music began to play. Amenhotep loved music and had insisted on procession music composed especially for me as I would walk through the palace and to the temple. When he was determined, enthused, and persistent, nothing seemed to get in his way. Our advantage was that it was our special day. My eldest sister-in-law took my elbow in her own, walking me to my final destination, my way lined with curious bystanders. The closer Cinnamon and I came to the temple, the louder my special music became. Inside was a grand gathering, as was just outside the temple. Making a grand appearance was Amenhotep III and Queen T, but they kept to the side, leaving the center to let the bride and groom take the spotlight, figuratively speaking. Amenhotep III seemed rather distracted, as if trying to pull himself mentally elsewhere. Every so often, he'd rub his jaw in a masculine manner, though the truth was that he was still suffering, and he was trying to ease his pain inconspicuously. But despite toothaches and everything else, Amenhotep III was here to watch his son marry. Perhaps father and son were not so isolated after all. It was somewhat rather bittersweet. He had no expression, whereas T greeted me with a warm smile. Such a thing, so simple, yet it eased my nerves. As I passed, I heard courtiers and priests whisper behind me grand praises of my glamour. "Wow," came one exasperated sigh. "Oh my, look at her," from another. "She's so radiant." And of course, "Oh, she's so beautiful." I even heard a humorous whisper from one courtier nudging another. "The prince got himself a nice catch." Such things only painted my cheeks a humble pink. Side doors were opened, letting in a fresh, cool breeze. The temples were normally dark and closed, but it was demanded that as much open air be allowed in as possible. The scent in the air was a mixture of incense and a hint of what seemed like gardenia, a springtime garden wafting about and beyond its domain. It lifted through my skirts, my ribbons, and my pleats. My groom was very extravagant as well. His kilt seemed to be layered, a sheer layer over a less extravagant one. His belt glowed with royal blue, gold, and red. He wore gold earrings and many trinkets and rings. No expense was spared on him either. But why not? He was a part of the wealthiest family in Egypt. Suddenly, so suddenly, Amenhotep III began to snicker. "She hasn't tried to escape yet." "Amenhotep!" T scolded in a sort of whisper. "Be nice. Don't say things like that." Our wedding feast was held outside for all in Aten to see. It was a cool and breezy afternoon, a real blessing and a relief from the scorching hot sun. I felt a great ease, a real burden lifted from me. And beside me, now my husband. He smiled at me, handing me a golden cup filled with a liquid. It was wine or a dark beer. I hesitated as I looked at it. Was I supposed to drink it? Was it something symbolic? "Is something wrong?" he whispered. "I can't make a declaration without your support. I mean, I could, but it would look awfully silly." "We're allowed to drink stuff like this?" "Of course," he laughed. "It's our wedding. We're adults now. Let's enjoy the freedom and luxury." I slowly took hold of the cup and gave him a nervous smile. "If that is what you want." He nodded and stood, raising his cup. "Attention!" And he got it. "I want to thank everybody for making this day possible. Today will always be special to me. Behold now the future, your future, beginning of a glorious, glorious future." "Amenhotep," I whispered. He was getting a little carried away. "A beautiful woman has come to Egypt to rule by my side." Everyone let out a cheer as he sipped his beer. He then leaned over to kiss my cheek. My sip was small. This thick beer had to be an acquired taste, and I had not acquired it yet. I forced myself not to cringe. I focused my mind elsewhere. Queen of Egypt, the world's most powerful kingdom as of current. This day made me grow. I was truly happy. Yes, I was truly happy. Amenhotep III came up behind his son and placed a hand on his bony shoulder. "Son." "Father?" "Perhaps I have underestimated you. You speak well. You command attention. Perhaps you do have what it takes to become king." "I've only been telling you that since he was 5, T remarked, with Tepi and sisters nodding in confirmation. I thank you, Amenhotep IV smiled as he spoke in his gentle voice. I thank you all very much. I beamed happily. Pharaoh, sometimes big and beautiful gifts can come in small and strange-looking packages. Right. Wait, my husband gasped. Are you saying that I look strange? You can't mean that I'm short. I'm taller than you are. Metaphors, Amenhotep, I sighed. Artistic words and phrases. Oh, look, T cued. They're already following in our footsteps, my love. Eventually, I wanted to get away from the hustle and bustle of the celebration. I have never been one for long parties. In fact, wasn't that how I met my husband the first time? I was eager for some quiet and a break from the crowds and rambunctious frivolities. It actually took very little coaxing for me to have my way. It was as if Amenhotep IV could read my thoughts, and he escorted me out while everyone was busy with each other. I don't think they ever even noticed that we had escaped. And if they had, they likely figured it would be for stereotypical reasons, and knew not to follow. The celebration would continue in our absence, and we made our way to our special place on the roof of the palace. There, we saw an orange sky as his Aten dipped into the horizon. Amenhotep had brought up a stool to sit on. Myself, I chose to sit on the ground between his legs. I rested back against him, putting my head onto his soft belly to peer up at him. He seemed to enjoy being touched. He was a very animated and touchy-feely sort of person. He was kneading into my back and shoulders, bringing me to a point of total relaxation. So, this is married life. It's not so bad. So far, so good. But it's only been a few hours, he replied. One day, you shall be a controlling matriarch, just like my mother. I don't want us to be like that, I frowned. I know your parents love each other, but I want for us to be better off. I understand, he nodded. It's possible. After all, I can't mistreat my gift from Aten. I could feel his body shivering beneath me. Was he nervous? Excited? Cold? All of the above? It's a little too chilly out here for me now, he said, as if knowing what I was thinking. Again. He was getting rather talented at that. I got off the ground and scooted onto his lap. He gasped, stiffening his muscles a little. He had obviously not been expecting that. But he quickly settled and smiled sweetly as I gave him an affectionate snuggle. Does this warm you up at all? He looked into my eyes. This expression, it was like none that I had ever seen from him before. He seemed totally entranced by me. Enchanted even. It was as if he was contemplating his next move. He brought his hands to my cheeks and led my face towards his for a kiss. For the first time, we experienced our first adult kiss, husband to wife. I was lost in it, and I was left unable to speak when it was over. My heart was beating so fast, and so hard. I thought it would escape through my chest. He gave me a gentle push, a signal that he wished to stand and needed me off his lap. He took my hand once he was to his feet and held me close to him as we made our way down through the palace. It just felt so nice and right to be this close. If there were people in the corridors, we didn't notice. We were lost in our warm little psychedelic world of music, flowers, and singing birds in the colorful sky in our heads. A true euphoria, a natural high. We said nothing. There were just no words that needed to be said. I wasn't even really aware of where we were going, nor did I care. I wasn't even aware if he even had a destination. I was with him. That was all I needed to know. My world was lost in him, and him alone. I only then realized that we did have a destination when he stopped. The euphoric pocket dimension of our minds faded away, and back into reality I came. We were in front of his chambers. He led me in quietly. Perhaps I was rather naive about what was going on. Many a night, for quite some time, I took refuge with him here. I trusted him. Once in the privacy inside, he held me close and he endowed me with a passionate and almost desperate kiss. I knew it. The French did not invent this kiss. As if by pure instinct, we were drawn to one another. His hands wandered over my body as I braced myself against him. He absently opened the front of my dress and draped it down off the back of my shoulders, beginning to pepper soft kisses down my neck. I was lost in the feeling myself slip away. But then, without warning, an alarm sounded in my head. I gasped, being thrust back into full reality and into realizing what was happening. Without taking a second thought, I pushed him away, stepping back in panic. The poor thing. He was completely confused. He seemed absent a moment, going over all of this in his head, replaying all of the events up until now, wondering where he could have possibly gone wrong to offend me so. It was our first time, after all. What's wrong, Nefertiti? Am I not doing it right? Would you like it another way? Something else? I can't, I trembled. Why not? Husbands have been making love to their wives since the dawn of time. It's perfectly natural. I can't explain it, I insisted. You wouldn't understand. I'm sorry. I pushed away from him again, fleeing from his room and running clear across the wing of the palace for my own private chambers, pushing soldiers and stray servants out of my way. I heard him chasing and calling after me at first, stopping just outside of his own threshold. Nefertiti! But it was only once or twice that I heard his voice. And then I heard him no more. I curled up in my bed, trembling. What had I just done? My behavior. How horrible! I wasn't sure if I wanted to scream or cry. No sound came from my mouth, no matter how hard I tried to push for something. Anything! I shut my eyes, feeling the tight pressure in my head from this self-inflicted stress. From a panic state to darkness I drifted, carried off into a dreamless sleep. At first, when I awoke, I thought for sure that hours had passed, but I could still hear the activities continuing outside. This meant that very little time had actually passed. Perhaps then I had napped for no more than a half an hour. I then gasped loudly, bringing my hands to my face. I ran out on Amenhotep. I ran out on him on our wedding night. Oh, he must have become so angry. How mortifying. How... Oh no! I remembered passing the servants and soldiers. They had to have started whispering rumors and crude statements by now. And there would be no hiding it from him. What have I done? I had to go to him. But what if now he wouldn't have me? Did I destroy it before I could even have it? Up I got and rushed to the door, peering out. I could still hear faint music as I snuck myself down the halls. One way I looked, not a soul. The other way, a scribe walking away in the distance. Is there some trouble? A voice asked, making me scream and spin around, whirling my fist. Amazingly, my hand was caught like a baseball in a snug mitt within Tempe's hand. Tempe? Damn it! You scared the bazonkers out of me! Where did you come from? If I knew what a bazonker was, I'd apologize, my lady, he replied with a courteous bow. You know, it's rather unnatural for a newlywed bride to not spend her first night with her eager husband. I frowned at his words. I'm sorry, Tempe. I ran away. So I've heard. But why? It makes no logical sense. Not from you. I'm afraid I've never been with anyone like that before. I mean, it's been innocent in there until now. Like that? As in? He asked suspiciously, though I'm sure he knew exactly what I meant. Like him? Or... Like that, as in sex, Tempe, I said bluntly. This seemed to lower any defenses he was prepared to use, and he smiled sweetly. Oh, don't worry. Neither is he. You mean you knew that we never... Nefertiti, Amenhotep is a very sweet young man, but he is a man. When men have sex, We feel a grand need to advertise it to everybody. If he had been having any luck, I'd be the first person he'd tell. Is this some secret man club thing? To that, he only chuckled. I sighed, turning my gaze away. I just... He placed a hand on my shoulder encouragingly. Nefertiti, it's all right. I understand. You don't have to explain it to me. You do? Of course. And I'm sure he will understand too, if you tell him. I'm sure I hurt his feelings, and his pride, I frowned. So, explain it to him. He is very sensitive and affectionate. He won't forgive me. You've already confirmed that the rumors are already spreading. I've destroyed him. You leave talkers to me, my lady. I shall look after His Young Majesty's best interests and image. This is a misunderstanding, and I promise you, all negative talk shall be silenced. His stare was intense. He was dead serious, and even I believed he would go to even extreme measures to protect my husband's image now. But then he softened and smiled brightly once again. You worry about having a happy marriage. Make lots of babies. I gave him a small smile. You're amazing, Teppy. You're so friendly and loyal. Politics are fine, he stated, but at the end of the day, politicians are still people with real thoughts and feelings. Why aren't you married? I asked him. You'd make a wonderful husband, and you'd make a wonderful father with the way you handle things. Maybe one day, my lady, he replied. For now, I'm married to my work, and I took part in raising very bright children. I nodded in lieu of any other words. I padded quietly down the corridors, back to Amenhotep's chambers. Having been left alone, I hesitated once I reached the doors. What if he was asleep? No. I could see the lights flickering under the door. I gulped hard. He was still awake. The matter of how upset he was, well, only one way to find out. So slowly, I opened the door. He was leaning against the wall, head resting on his arm. He was quiet, and he didn't acknowledge me. His face was red and flushed. Of course he would cry. He probably felt horribly betrayed. I had put him on such a high pedestal over the last few years. To abandon him the way that I did, it must have crushed him. Ah, yes, I know why he wasn't acknowledging me. He wasn't even aware that I had returned. I had come in so quietly. He wasn't facing me, and I wasn't close enough. But, believing that he was still alone, he turned away from the wall, now turning his back completely to me. He removed his kilt, tossing it aside to be picked up and cleaned in the morning. I was able to get a really good look at him as he turned around, and he prepared himself to give up and call it a night. With no belt to press against his potbelly, it was less noticeable. He reminded me of a man with a beer gut. But then again, his hips were still rather large. It didn't quite look like a spare tire. He actually, looking at him that way, reminded me of a woman who had birthed a few children. He was a squishy pear with skinny and long extremities, but any rumors about his sex were all debunked. I can personally guarantee that they were. Trust me, he was very, definitely, male. The obscurity of his sex was often a topic so carefully whispered about the courtiers, and when he turned around, yes, he was most definitely male. Wow. He peered up and gasped, perhaps seeing my form framed against the little light. But the small noise pulled me from my trance, and I lifted my gaze from his form to his face. Whoops. I was concentrating too much on his groin, wasn't I? I blushed and leaned back against the doors, which I had quietly closed behind me when I entered. Nefertiti? Yes, I whispered shamefully. Amenhotep, I'm sorry. I think I know. He turned away from me. You are ashamed of me. Is that it? It was fine when we were just friends. You would never have to have a naked body with yours. But being my wife is different. The thought of making love to the man you could have once seen as your brother disgusts you. Or is it not the relationship? As a friend, you had safety from everything. As my wife, you actually had to give your body to me, and that disgusts you. I disgust you. But I understand. You want the status. This was a marriage of convenience after all, wasn't it? Amenhotep. Are you ashamed of me? He demanded, turning to face me. Look at me, Nefertiti. He motioned for me to look him over. Really, what was I to be ashamed of? Looked like I was making out like a bandit when it came to what I could get from him. Is this the body of a child of Amun? I am no warrior. I am not the dashing lord of Egypt, emulated all over the land. Nobody fears my face or power. There is no crown prince. I am lower than that. And Amun is disgusted. The gods cursed me at my conception, and I was forced to pay them respect, worship, and homage for this. They loved the royal family, but not me, Nefertiti. I didn't think anybody could love me, and honestly, I couldn't blame them. You are like them, aren't you, Nefertiti? After these last few years, when all is said and done, despite it all, you are like them. He paused, gritting his teeth in frustration. Tell me the truth, Nefertiti. Tell me! He said the last part rather quietly, trying to calm himself. I can handle it. If you tell me that you do not love me, I'll accept it. I won't be angry. My feelings for you are still the same. We can keep this union symbolic and nothing more. I will give you a life of power and luxury. We can simply remain friends. Even if we are married, I'd rather keep your devoted friendship than to not have you at all. Stop! I shouted, rushing forward and throwing my hands over his mouth to silence him. Stop it, Amenhotep! It had nothing to do with you! He turned his head to free his mouth and glared at me. Then what? What was it then? He grabbed my wrists. If not my deformities, then what? I was afraid, I said humbly, bowing my head shamefully. I was afraid of being intimate with you. I have no experience. It upsets me to be like that. I want to share my everything with you. He seemed very surprised, but after a few moments he finally began to soften his expression. You do not find me ugly? Of course not, I insisted. I never did. I've always been attracted to you. There is no one else I would rather have. Aten made me for you, remember? Aten! Floating unisexual god, remember? Your jokes are wasted on me right now. The tension is so thick, I can't stand it. My point is that I love you. I love you, for all of you. I would not have agreed to marry you otherwise. If it was just for status and power, I would have married you when you first made your proposal. I'm not like that. You should know that. Honest? He asked hopefully. I nodded, taking in a deep breath. I untied my dress, letting it slip into a heap at my feet. I then held out my hands to receive him, my husband. He still seemed uncertain and unsure, insecure. He took a hesitant step towards me, then another before he slipped into my embrace and locked me into his. He gave me a gentle squeeze. Nefertiti, I never want to hurt you. I never want for you to be afraid of me. You don't realize how much you mean to me. You gave me a zest for life. Please, don't ever take it away from me. I nuzzled into his neck. I swear, Amenhotep, I'll never leave you. He rubbed his cheek over the top of my head. His touch was so soft and gentle. How could anything other than that ever come from him? Since we met, he had never had a desire to hurt me in any way, physically or emotionally. He had more to fear from me than I from him. I ran my hands down his body, stopping at and placing my hands on his hips. We looked into each other's eyes, unable to even fancy the idea of separating. We had been placed under a strange, romantic spell, entranced with one another. The fire was starting to sear through my veins, and I was certain that it affected him too. After what seemed like forever, he released me. He grew serious once again. Nefertiti, I don't want to force you into anything. We'll be married for the rest of our lives. We don't have to go through this on the first night. I've gone this long without it, and it won't kill me to go a little longer. If you are not ready, then you are not ready. I can wait. But ready for what? I sighed. What was I saving myself for? Marriage, right? The person who was to have me would be the man that I was in love with. My husband. I brushed past him, sliding my hands across his body as I came to sit on his bed, striking a sexy supermodel pose and giving him a vixen stare. We should be intimate, but I will only ask one thing of you. Name it, and it'll be yours, he said in an almost desperate breath. He was growing very eager with my temptations. This erotic, romantic stuff was pretty easy. Please be gentle with me, I said in a sexy voice. Oh, this was driving him mad. As gentle as a kitten on a pillow, he cooed, gliding over to me and sitting himself beside me. We slid onto the bed and kissed passionately. He extinguished his lamp, leaving us in a tantalizing darkness. Oh, this made everything so much more exciting. He was as gentle as he could possibly have been. It was a proud feeling. No one but I knew him this way. No one but his wife, his queen. However, it didn't last long at first. But I stress, at first. We knew each other rather well into the night, enjoying basking in the afterglow just as much as the ordeal itself. Like any grand romance, the evening ended with us falling asleep in each other's arms.